Look, waiting for your Arizona state tax refund can be incredibly frustrating. I mean, you've got bills to pay or plans for that cash, right? You check your bank account, you check your mail, and nothing. But hey, don't worry, because there's actually a quick, easy, and completely secure way to track it down. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to walk through a clear, step-by-step visual guide to finding your Arizona state tax refund for the 2025 and 2026 filing season. It's literally the burning question on everyone's mind come springtime. Where exactly is my money? If you've been sitting in the dark wondering if your return is lost in the digital ether or stuck in some random mail sorting facility, rest easy. By the end of this explainer, we're going to completely eliminate that uncertainty for you. You'll know exactly where to look, what info you need, and what the holdup might actually be. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap we've got for today. First, the Arizona refund basics. Then, a step-by-step status check. Third, why is my refund delayed? After that, we'll look at some real taxpayer experiences and finally wrap up with pro tips and final thoughts. Section 1, the Arizona refund basics. And this brilliantly illustrates how the Arizona Department of Revenue, or ADOR, actually handles your money. One of the absolute most fundamental rules of tax season is that how you file dictates how fast you get paid. For the 2026 processing season, ADOR data shows that e-filed returns are flying through in about 6 days, generally wrapping up in well under 8 weeks. But if you mail a paper return, wow, it takes about 16 days just to get scanned into their system, and you're looking at a minimum of 10 weeks before it's fully processed. So e-filing is literally up to 6 times faster than mailing paper. Also, before we start tracking the cash, it's worth just briefly noting the math behind it. For tax year 2025, Arizona uses a flat 2.5% income tax rate across the board, no matter your filing status. It's actually one of the lowest in the country and really simplifies the math on your Form 140. But, even with a simple flat tax, you still just want to know where your refund is. So, let's get to the tracking part. Section 2, step-by-step status check. All right, let's show you exactly how to find your money using Arizona's official tools. There are basically 3 simple steps. Step 1, gather your info. You're going to need your social security number, your exact filing status, so, single or married filing jointly, and your Arizona zip code exactly as it appears on your return. Step 2, and I literally cannot stress this enough, go to the official secure site, aztaxes.gov. Please don't use weird third-party links. And step 3, just click on the Where's My Refund tool and plug that info right in. So the crucial point is right here, and it's a big difference from the federal system. If you've ever tracked a federal refund with the IRS, you know they make you type in the exact dollar amount you're expecting down to the absolute penny. Arizona's portal is actually way more convenient because it does not require your refund amount to check the status. Just your SSN, filing status, and zip code, and boom, you're in. So once you hit submit, you're going to see one of a few possible statuses, received or processing. Just means they have your return in hand and it's making its way through the system. Approved is the golden word. It means the math checks out, no fraud holds were triggered, and they're prepping your payment. And finally, sent means the money is officially out the door. Now, if you chose direct deposit, it should hit your bank within 2 business days of seeing the status. If you opted for a paper check, you'll need to give it maybe 3 to 5 business days for the post office to actually deliver it. Section 3. Why is my refund delayed? Okay, but what if your status just says processing for weeks on end? Let's troubleshoot some of those anxieties and the systemic roadblocks that might be holding up your funds. One major reason for a delayed or reduced refund is called a tax refund offset. This is basically when the state intercepts your refund to cover an outstanding debt. We're talking things like unpaid child support, back taxes from a previous year, or defaulted state student loans. Now, if this happens, don't panic. The state is going to automatically mail you a physical notice explaining exactly why the reduction happened and where that money went. Another major and honestly very current reason for delays is something called OBB conformity. For tax year 2025, there's this purely mechanical and legal factor at play. Basically, Governor Hobbs issued Executive Order 2025-15 telling ADR to include things like higher standard deductions and tip deductions on the tax forms. The catch? The actual state legislation to back that up was vetoed and is still pending in budget negotiations. So if you claimed these deductions, your return might be placed on a systemic hold. It's not an audit, it's simply a legal waiting game while the state legislature resolves the tax code. Beyond offsets in pending legislation, there are a few other common culprits. ADR has significantly expanded its manual fraud screening checks for the 2026 filing season to protect taxpayers, which is great, but it means you might get caught in a completely random identity theft verification hold. Other standard delays are just simple things: math errors on your Form 140, forgetting to sign it, or leaving out your W-2 data or putting in the wrong bank routing numbers. Section 4, Real Taxpayer Experiences. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it grounds all this technical talk in reality. Let's look at a post from a real Reddit user on a tax help forum. They were expecting a direct deposit, right? But they got caught in one of those expanded fraud screens we just talked about, simply because they used a third-party software. ADR randomly flagged the return for security and decided to convert the direct deposit into a mailed paper check. It's incredibly frustrating and adds like 4 to 6 weeks to the timeline, but it's a very real-world example of how aggressive fraud prevention can delay a perfectly legitimate refund. Let's move to and see how this builds with a fictional but highly realistic scenario based on this year's tax laws. Meet Marcus. He's a restaurant manager in Scottsdale. He e-files his taxes in early February and, as he should, rightfully claims the OBBB tip deduction on his Form 140, right where the new executive order told him to put it. So 3 weeks go by, and his online tracker is just stubbornly stuck on processing. Then Marcus gets a physical notice in the mail from ADR. It says his return is placed on a systemic hold, pending review of that tip deduction. The absolute crucial thing here. The notice says no action required. So Marcus shouldn't panic, he shouldn't call 50 times, and he absolutely should not file an amended return. He just has to sit tight and wait for the state's legal framework to catch up. And here's the resolution for Marcus. 7 weeks after he files, the Arizona legislature finally passes conformity legislation that legally authorizes that deduction. ADOR immediately releases the held returns in massive batches. Marcus checks the portal in week 8, his status switches to approved, and boom, 2 days later, the money hits his bank account. Section 5, Pro Tips and Final Thoughts. Navigating all of this definitely requires a bit of strategy. So here are the absolute best practices you should follow so your tax season is as stress-free as possible. First, always e-file and choose direct deposit. It is significantly faster and way more secure. Second, before hitting submit, triple check your routing and account numbers. A typo there will result in a rejected deposit and weeks of delay. For checking your status, give the system at least 3 business days after e-filing before checking the portal. And if you mailed paper, wait a full 4 weeks before even checking. Finally, monitor your physical mail. If there's a delay for identity verification or an offset, ADR is going to communicate that through a physical letter. Now, if you've waited out all the standard processing times and checked the online portal to no avail, you might actually need to speak to a human. You can call ADOR at 602-255-3381. To navigate their rather exhaustive multilingual phone tree, because nobody loves a phone tree, you'll want to press 1 for English, then 2, and then 4 to get directly to refund information. But a serious word of warning: if you mailed a paper return, do not bother calling until a full 10 weeks have passed. They literally will not investigate a paper return delay before that window closes. Of course, we do have to note that the information we've covered today is accurate based on the sources provided as of July 21st, 2026. State tax laws, processing timelines, and fraud prevention measures are literally constantly changing. So you should always verify the most current details, forms, and instructions directly with the Arizona Department of Revenue, or go ahead and consult a licensed tax professional. We've seen today how random fraud checks and pending legislation can honestly grind the gears of a normally smooth system right to a halt. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative question. As digital fraud becomes more sophisticated and state tax laws continue to evolve in real time, will simply getting our own money back become a highly complex, months-long waiting game in the years to come? It's definitely something to think about as you prepare for future filing seasons. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you feel empowered and ready to track down your Arizona tax refund.